Okay, cool. So let's get started. So today we're just going to go over um, some basic CS technology things that I wish I knew when I was a freshman. And really, most CS students don't get to know until they're doing their first project or doing, or put in a situation where they have to learn this. So here's CS technology guide. We're going to go over a bunch of different things. And let's start from the top. So the very first thing is, do you have a Mac or do you have a PC? And so that's an obvious choice. If you have a Mac, you're going to be using iOS, or you're going to be using Mac OS, High Sierra, whatever the new one is. And then if you have a Windows device, you're going to be using Windows. These are great. Obviously, most people are using these. There is a way to get Windows onto your MacBook, but you can do everything on a MacBook that you can do on a Windows and vice versa. Not literally everything, but as far as school goes, you'll be fine. But there's another OS that a lot of freshmen don't know about, and that's Linux. So if you see a dude coding in Linux, try and be his or her friend, because they're probably better than you, because Linux users are crazy. Um, it's going to be, so Linux is another operating system like Windows, and Linux pretty much gives you more freedom through allowing you to control what the kernel allows you to do. So I won't get too deep into it. You guys will be taking classes on this later, but pretty much in Linux, you can control your command line more easily, and you can manage the file system more easily. There's multiple benefits, of which like I can't name all of them, but all I know is like real power users are really into Linux. So just know what that is. It's also open source, and there's a lot of different distributions for it. So any flavor, there's different like flavors of Linux. Like for example, that icon on the left, that's called Kali Linux. A lot of hackers use that, and I don't know why I don't use Kali Linux, but I know that's a great distribution, which or distribution of Linux for hackers. Pretty much distributions are, uh, as I said before, they're flavors, so different like layouts, different UIs, and there's probably some other differences in there, but that's what distributions are. But you can do all of this inside of a virtual machine, and so that's the icon in the middle. That's called VirtualBox. Later on, you're going to have a class that requires you to, make a or have a virtual machine on your computer so you can run Linux. Typically, you'll run Linux in something called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the icon on the right. Ubuntu, you've probably heard of at least the name before by now. If not, that's fine. But Ubuntu is going to be the most common distribution of Linux that you guys are going to use. It's going to be what the classes recommend you get onto your virtual box. You'll probably, the first time you'll probably use your virtual machine, aka a VM, is going to be either in CSE 240, where they first like start making you use the command line, or it's going to be later on in like CSE 330, where you start doing like Linux based kernel type stuff. So just be aware of this. You guys are just freshmen right now, so you don't have to worry about this too much, but basically know that a virtual box or a virtual machine is going to allow you to put another operating system inside your computer. So like you'd use a virtual box to like put Windows onto your Mac, that sort of thing. So that's like something that's really cool. Sometimes they run horribly, so you want to like do something called dual booting, but you can look that up on your own. But yeah, just know what a virtual machine is. All right, so now let's go into what browser you should use. This is an important question. This is where you're going to do all your schoolwork, interact with Canvas, do all this necessary stuff. And so, what browser should you use? Well, I really suggest Safari or Edge. They're baked in. I'm just kidding. Don't use either of these. They're absolutely horrible. Just use Chrome or Firefox. There's no other reason you should be using, Safari or Edge. Uninstall them if you can. But yeah, use Chrome. I like this Chrome-based browser called Vivaldi. Also, I think the new Microsoft Edge is Chrome-based. So yeah, just use Chrome. You get Chrome extensions. So much better. Firefox is cool too. So now let's talk about your IDEs. So IDEs are, a freshman favorite topic. So a lot of freshmen are still on Eclipse. I feel sorry for you if you still have Eclipse on your computer. I suggest you make the switch to JetBrains based IDEs. So JetBrains is a company that does a lot of cool stuff. You have to pay for their products, but through ASU you get a free JetBrains account and you get to use these products for free. So the IJ right there is IntelliJ. That's a significantly better IDE for your Java projects. I know most of your early like CSE 110, 205 projects are going to be written based on like the fact that you should be using Eclipse. But since you're submitting a .java file, you literally don't have to use Eclipse. So I suggest you don't. If you just want it to be easier and follow like instructions directly as they show up for your assignments, Eclipse can be easy because, you know, everything's the same. But if you want to be, you know, if you want to boss up, if you want to, you know, make your workflow significantly better, switch to IntelliJ. Also, when you start working in C, I suggest C line. It lets you debug. But if you want something cleaner, kind of like more minimalist, I suggest Visual Studio Code. That's the icon on the far right. Visual Studio Code is very clean. You can run pretty much any different language. It has great like extensions to make it look nice. Yeah, Visual Studio Code. Just get off Eclipse if you can. All right, cool. So now we'll talk about languages in computer science. So a lot of students are all hung up on the fact that like, oh, I got to learn a different language. Like I got to go and learn Python, or I got to go learn like Ruby or something. It doesn't work. It doesn't really work like that, or it can work like that. But a better way that I've found is you're going to learn a language based on what you're doing and what you like to do. You're not going to go out there and be like, let me learn something and then see what I can do with it later. No, you're going to think like, what type of project do I want to make? What do I want to make? And then how do I go and, you know, make that? And the way you do that is through learning the language. So focus more on technologies that you want to learn. So like if you want to learn how to make a web app that's like really fast and like, you know, is modern, you're probably going to end up using something like React, which we'll talk about later. And then you're like, okay, I got to go learn React. Well, React requires me to have a basic understanding of HTML and CSS so I can work with like, you know, web pages. But then it also requires me to have a basic understanding of JavaScript. And so you having a goal that's higher up will force you to learn the languages that you know, is required to build, you know, your project or build whatever you want to make. So don't worry about going out like being like, oh, I got to teach myself C#. Think about like, I want to make, so I know Unity uses a lot of C#. Unity is like a game design engine. And if you want to learn Unity, you probably should go learn C#. So make your goal, I want to make games. Okay, through that, I got to learn Unity. Okay, through that, I'm going to have to learn some C#. So think about it that way. Hello. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to go into your basic technologies. So these are going to be web tools. This is going to be the start of what is called full stack. We'll define full stack later, but web is going to be your most basic, like intro to coding. A lot of people who aren't computer science majors still like can manage typical web coding. So you got your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript. So HTML is, if you don't know how to read it already, it's really easy to learn. It'll take you just a couple like weekends worth of investigating. I'm sure all of you have like clicked like F12 on your keyboard and like have seen HTML pop up on the side, whether you knew what it was or not. You've probably seen it. It's just a markup language, which means it can't do math. It can't calculate things. All it does is, you know, formulate different objects. All it does is like modify the web page and like add text and stuff. And so it's not that bad for learning. It has like a pretty easy syntax. And then CSS takes HTML and makes it look pretty. That's pretty much all it does. And there's different, you know, plugins that you can use to make, you know, coding HTML and CSS easier, but we can talk about those later. And then where you can start doing math and you can start doing cool stuff on web-based projects is with JavaScript. So JavaScript is going to be the king of, you know, web-based coding. That's where you're going to do your calculations. That's where you're going to do like things like animations. JavaScript is really essential for those of you looking to start doing web. And also in general, when you're designing a web, if you start making a website, for example, a lot of computer science majors or CES majors or anybody looking to do any type of coding want a personal website. And so, you know, when you're making your website, you should design it with a mobile first approach. If your website doesn't fully function on mobile, then you don't want to, you know, continue with it. You got to fix the mobile aspect first, because most browsing nowadays is on mobile. So we're going to start going through the design process. So the very first design process is just thinking of, how can I make the UI look good? The UI is the user interface. How can I make it look good? I can make it look good using something like Adobe XD or Figma. This doesn't like code it for you. This just these are just design tools that allow you to make your idea look cool, and you can put it into fruition, and you can make it so like you can make layouts on Figma where you go like, oh, if I click this button, I want this screen to appear for the user, that sort of thing. So these are good tools for that. If you're into design, doing UX, which is user experience, or UI, user interface. So that's the very top level, but let's talk about what full stack means. And full stack pretty much means there's a front end and a back end. And if you are a full stack developer, you do both. Full stack, like, oh, the top of the stack, bottom, or like top for the front end, bottom for the back end. That's what they mean by full stack. And so front end is going to have to do strictly with, your user sees a button, they click it, they expect something to happen. And so front end's going to deal with that. It's going to be all the like objects on the screen that the user can look at and interact with. It's going to be all the elements of how the user, like what the user sees. So that's front end. And, something like a front end interaction would be, I'm at the like Bank of America mobile app and I click log in. I expect to be brought to my home screen, right, of the bank. So obviously that doesn't just happen. Like, it's not like you click something and it'll automatically go to the next screen. So what you need to verify, so say now you need to verify the user's login credentials, you're going to use something like the backend. So the backend is something that the user doesn't care about. The backend is something that the user doesn't have to worry about because you're taking care of it. And basically, when I click that login button for the bank app, as the user, I expect it to just bring me there. Well, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. I know that, my login credentials have to be brought to the server. They have to be verified. And so that's what the backend's about. It's about taking, data. It's mostly about data. It's entirely about data, actually. It's about sending back and forth data, verifying things. And so the backend is, when we say backend, that's what we mean. It's just like taking user data, fetching, receiving, updating, that sort of stuff. And, the user doesn't have to worry about it because we're taking care of it. It's the back side of things. They're not responsible for like worrying about that. So when it comes to full stack, a very important skill is to have knowledge of frameworks. And so frameworks are a great way to get a better grasp on different technologies. So a framework will allow you to more easily use, like, say, JavaScript, or it can more easily allow you to use something like, CSS. There's so many different frameworks for different technologies. And so basically what it is a abstraction of functionality. So do either of you know what abstraction means? If not, like, it's fine, because this is just like, you guys are just at freshman level courses, and abstraction is kind of a weird topic. But do like Charles or Eric, do you guys know what abstraction means?
No, yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea.
So how about one of you try and define it?
I guess it's like a way to like generalize like a feature or a functionality, I guess.
That's good. What about you, Charles?
No, I don't really know what it is.
Okay, that's totally fine. Yeah, you guys are definitely not expected to know. So basically, in an easy way to think about abstraction is like let's take the bank example from before with full stack, or with front end and back end. Me as a user, when I click log in, I don't want to know, like, I don't want to be told like, oh, fetching data, sending API requests, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to know about all that. I just want to know that when I click the button, I'm going to eventually be brought to the right screen. And so that's kind of the idea of abstraction, where it's you put in something, you do something, there's a black box. You don't care what happens in the black box. All you want to know is what comes out of the black box. You just want to know the result. And so that's kind of what abstraction means. And so frameworks are a good way to help start that. I'm sorry I hit you with so many logos. This is overwhelming, but these are different frameworks. Obviously, you don't have to know all of them. You don't have to have heard of all of them. But there's a couple that you should hear about, and probably the biggest one as far as full stack JavaScript goes is going to be React.js. I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of this. It's if you don't know what to do with computer science so far, if you don't know what to learn and you got time to learn something, honestly, just go ahead and start learning HTML, CSS, and React, because that's going to make you hireable if you know how to use React. It's a great place to just start and start seeing, what different coding's like. That's an example of a front end framework. React's going to deal with the front end because it works with different states. It modifies the states, modifies objects that the user sees. But the way we modify the data is maybe through a backend framework like Express. You don't need to worry about how these things work yet. Just know what they like. Just honestly, as freshmen, if you've even heard of React and Express, that's huge. So yeah, just know what they are, or just start investigating if you're interested. So another important thing with full stack obviously is databases. There's a whole class for that later on. Once you're a junior or senior, you can take CSE 412, really great class. I'm trying to take it next semester, but we'll see. So you're going to learn things like SQL, or Firebase, or not Firebase, but that's like an example of one. So basically, SQL is the main, like PostgreSQL, if you've ever heard of it, is like the main like language that databases use. And so, in CSE 412, you'll be learning that. It's a great tool, almost essential for new grads to know if you plan on working with things like full stack technology or working with databases. You need to know SQL. You guys don't need to worry about like how they work right now. Just know what they are. Also, Firebase is like a cloud version of like, data storage. This all has to do with data storage. And, when it comes to data storage, there's a lot of cool different topics. I won't overwhelm you guys right now, but just start knowing like, yeah, if I'm working with a product or a project and it requires multiple users' data, I'm probably going to need a database. And so SQL is typically where you want to go with that. So let's talk about an API. I know as a freshman, I had not even heard of an API, or whenever I heard it, I became scared. But you don't have to be. It's not, as a concept, it's not too bad. So API stands for Application Programming Interface, and I like to start it off with an example. So if the program were a restaurant, the API would be the waiter who takes your order from the menu, brings it to the kitchen, and then later delivers your food. What is the food? The food is going to be the data that you want. So you're the programmer, right? You are at a restaurant and you're looking at a menu. This is all the functionalities that the API has to offer for you. For example, the API can let you, get something. The API can let you set something. The API can let you post something. These are all different functions that are on the menu that you have as a programmer. You're going to use the API to, send an order to the kitchen, which is going to be the database or the API of another service. And I'll talk about what services there are later. And then it allows you to take that data and then bring it back to you, the food, so you can modify it, so you can use it, so you can display it, do whatever with it. Obviously, there's security checks and balances so you can't just like go and steal everyone's information and change it all. But, that's generally what an API is. And an API returns data in a JSON format. When I was a freshman, sophomore, I heard JSON all the time. And I was like, what is this? Like, no one's ever explained this to me. It's just a data format. You don't have to worry about right now, like what it looks like or how to read it. But whenever you see JSON, it's a data format. It took me so long to learn that. It's embarrassing, but no one tells you these things. So that's what JSON is. So here's why APIs are cool. It's because you can use it. There's thousands of companies that offer amazing APIs. If you ever like logged into a third-party service for like, say, Spotify to look at your Spotify play history, something like that, it's using the Spotify API. So different companies have APIs available for programmers to use. Again, it's like me going like, I'm at the Spotify restaurant and I want to order, user number 55's most played playlist. I can use the Spotify API to go grab that. So that's why APIs are cool, because you can look at users' data like that, and there's security. Like users can like create different API keys that allow third-party apps to like only view their information, or if they want to allow them to change the information. But there's different levels of security, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But it's just so cool what you can do if you want to build like a third party Discord app that tracks how much, like, who your best friends are based on how much you message. You're going to use the Discord API, that sort of thing. So there's Twitter APIs, Facebook, Instagram, so many different things that you can use. So APIs are really cool. You don't have to worry about working with them yet, but just know what they are. I guarantee you, like, if you're in CSE 110, maybe like 5 other people know what APIs are at this point. So that's great. I'm glad you guys are learning. Let's talk about mobile development. So mobile development is awesome. It's definitely, going to be a massive segment of the future. It already is. If you're an iOS dev, you're going to want to go and learn Swift. That's just how it is. If you want to make something that's compatible with both, React Native is a good place to start, or Flutter. These are really awesome frameworks. These are frameworks. React Native and Flutter are frameworks for mobile development. And so that's, how frameworks work. It allows you to, you're not just going to go and write raw JavaScript to make an app. Like you're going to want some sort of framework to make it easy. And so like, I know I'm using React, like for one of my projects, I made an easy application to that. Like I love snowboarding. So I made an application that generates random snowboard tricks for me and my friends to do. And so using React Native, I started it up. That's my, the framework. I followed a tutorial to like, how to start an app project in React Native. And then I like implemented the functionality, like it chooses like a random trick out of this list that I have. And then, another really awesome extension that I use is called Expo. And that allows me to download the Expo app on my phone and then open my React Native project on my actual cellular device. And so that's another really cool, framework that I have. And so there's so many cool things you can do with that. But yeah, mobile development's really cool. If you want to get into it, it's lucrative, it's fun, it's creative. I love mobile development. So yeah, guys, check that out. Okay. Do you guys have any questions at this point?
What was that thing that was like about like designing like websites in the like very beginning? Like
Yeah.
what was that
Okay.
called?
So here, I'll go back to that. So these two things, Adobe
Yeah.
XD, Figma.
Mhm.
Okay. So Adobe XD is like, it's like Photoshop or InDesign, but designed for like develop, or like it's for designing websites or mobile applications. And all it is a design platform. So like it lets you bring in shapes, lets you bring in boxes, text boxes, stuff like that. It doesn't code anything for you, but it allows you to get a working picture of like what your thing looks like. And then Figma is really cool because it's free and online. Same thing, right? You just like, you can create like you have like a canvas, and then you can like take in like the shape of like a website, or like take in the shape of a phone, and then through there you can like import shapes and colors and text to like kind of make your UI look good. And then Figma also does a really cool thing by providing the CSS for the object that you made. So yeah, these are just design tools. They're totally optional. It's just helpful to like start here. If you have like an app idea and you're like, oh, I want it to look like this, use one of these. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I have another question. So like
Yeah.
I've used like Node.js and like NPM and that type of stuff, and I've built a website like before, and like the thing is that I've heard of React.js. Is that like on top of like Node.js and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, so here I think I'm about to talk
Oh,
about
okay,
that.
nice.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's a great thing you brought up. So through Node.js, I think I forgot if Node.js is a package manager, but I know it definitely is something you need to install if you want to use React. But basically, let me talk first about package managers. So package managers, you're going to hear things like npm or yarn. These are going to be software tools that make it a lot easier for you to um, install other programs. So like you're going to use npm to install something like um, the package, or install the packages you need to use something like React. Um, you got it as a freshman with like, if you haven't used npm or yarn or node.js or anything like that, well, node.js is, I think, it's different, but if you haven't used npm, it's kind of like hard to imagine, but basically you're going to use it to install different things. At most people's level, it seems like some of you, I mean, some of you are like crazy freshmen who have gone out and done a lot of coding already. But for typical freshmen, like assuming that all you know is what you've been taught in CSE 110, npm's kind of like a crazy idea right now, but basically just know that npm, yarn, these two different things just allow you to install different packages. And so to be honest, I've it I'm not sure. I should have looked up exactly what Node.js is. I think Node.js is something you install through npm, through which like it helps you, install React. And so, Arik, were you asking if it's like, if React is like a product of Node.js or like how it relates?
I guess I thought like it's like a framework, right? React.js.
React, yes, React.js is
Okay.
a front end framework. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, that's basically what I was asking about.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm sorry. I should definitely know how Node.js works with all that. I I know there's like Next.js and stuff that's like related. I'm not too sure, but you like this will give you a general overview. Hopefully, we can like look that up after if you need help like figuring out what it is. But it sounds like you used it, so that's good. All right, let's talk about version control. Oh, I'm almost over time, but okay, real quick. Version control is a essential tool. If you're graduating from college with a computer science degree, you're going to need to know how to use version control. And so a lot of you have I know I like heard of GitHub, but didn't know what it was. GitHub is pretty much like, it's almost like a social media site nowadays, but it's a place where you can make an account and then store the source code for your projects and then kind of show it off, make documentation telling your users, how my documentation or how my project works. And so it all works through something, or, GitHub all works through this thing called Git, and Git is is the main version control, you know, software that people use. And so basically Git is installed through npm, and Git is a way where you can take your source code. If you're working on a project, you can save versions of it, and then later you can revert. If you save more versions, you can revert back to older versions. So if you like go far and then you mess up, you can go back to an older version. And Git also allows you to branch. So if you're here on your project and you worked and you're like, oh, I have this really cool idea, but it's kind of risky, don't know if it'll work, you can make a branch and work on it separately, a separate version of your project. And then if your branch ends up working out, you like it, you can merge it back into your main branch in Git, and then boom, you have a whole new functionality for yourself. So Git is the basis of version control. GitHub's like a place where you can, store your Git. You can store your different versions of your project, and then show off the work you've done. And then also a great thing Git allows you to do is enables multiple people to work on a project. So it's almost essential for modern day businesses. Every single software development place will use a version of Git with their own version control. And it's definitely essential. You guys know this. The next project you start, do your best to enable Git and then put your project on GitHub. It's great to like start, getting these things. There's super easy tutorials online for you guys to get started with this. But yeah, it's really good. It's pretty much the process of saving your projects and then being able to revert back to them later, making branches. It's very essential, and you can work on projects with multiple people through Git. Okay, so just to wrap it up, so I just want to cover two more topics. So I know a lot of you guys are stoked on things like machine learning, or well, I guess I'll just start with machine learning. So machine learning is obviously the future. It's like a buzzword for a reason. You can do so many cool things with it. I don't know too much about it, me personally, but I do know, you can do a lot of it with Python and this thing called TensorFlow. I haven't worked with TensorFlow at all, so don't ask me how it works. But if you're looking to get into machine learning, start looking at TensorFlow. That's all I can tell you. But machine learning is such a cool, place to start working with for sure. All right, and then last thing is cybersecurity. You won't look like that. I wish you did, but you just won't. Cybersecurity is, as it sounds, you're here to protect systems, you know, or you're here to break systems down in an ethical way so you can get paid by companies to show loopholes. So, well, let me talk about that real quick. So basically, a lot of cybersecurity, a lot of places, if you're going to be paid to be a hacker, you're going to be paid to be a good hacker, a white hat hacker, or is it white box? I forgot. A white hat hacker. You know, you don't want to be hacking, doing illegal stuff for, you know, work or for money. That's not good. You want to be doing it ethically. But a cool way to, you know, break systems ethically is there's a whole job called penetration testing where you can be paid by companies to find vulnerabilities in their system, pretty much hack their system. And then if you find this vulnerability and report it, you can be paid like tens of thousands of dollars. It's crazy. So if you want to get into cybersecurity, I really recommend DevilSec. It's an amazing club for that. Yeah, so that's cybersecurity. But let's talk real quick about this scary thing in the bottom left-hand corner. That is your terminal. I know as a freshman, whenever I saw a terminal, I was shaking in my boots. This thing, you know, looks very scary if you don't know what's going on. But once you do know what's going on, it's super. They're pretty mellow. You know, you don't have to know everything that's going on the page. But let me teach you guys real quickly the basics of learning. Can you guys see my cursor at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so this green line right here, that's going to be your user. So that's you, right? That'll say like whatever your user is. So for me, it'll be like K Weinhold for Kevin Weinhold, and it's going to be $:$. And so this right here where it says PS, this is going to be where I'm going to type in my command. I didn't type all this. I just typed PS, right? I didn't actually make this as a screenshot, but PS is going to be my command. And when I click enter, all this information below it is going to show up. So all this information below it is just the result of me typing this PS command. And so then how do I read this to see where I type my next command? It's just going to be the next green box here. So this is again the user again for me, and this is my next command ls. Ls is going to, okay, let me talk about really what the terminal does. The terminal, you know, is super scary, but the main functionality of the terminal is simply your file explorer. Like it's really just your file explorer. You see how when I type ls, it's going to be desktop, downloads, pictures. You guys all know what that is. That's just your file explorer. And so when you're in your terminal, most of the terminal work you're going to do is just navigating your files, maybe making new files, maybe installing new things with it. But really, the terminal is just you navigating your files. And the terminal allows you to navigate to different files using different commands. And then once you're in a certain file, you can execute different commands to, you know, modify the file. And so that's really all it is. It's really, it's not too bad. So you guys will 100% be forced to use this probably in 240, which is after 205, if you're a CS major. So yeah, just know what it is, but don't be scared. If you want to start looking into it, this is all written in a thing called Bash. Bash is kind of like the language of the terminal. And if you want to like start getting into hacking and practicing it, I suggest something like Hack the Box. Cool. So that's all I had for now. If any of you guys are interested, make sure to look up clubs related to what you like, or what maybe hopefully, you know, I introduced you to a new topic that maybe you're interested in. There's 100% a club there's going to be a club that exists for it. So please, please, please get into these clubs. You know, when they get in person, they're going to be even better. Or the best possible thing you can do for yourself, if you want to learn something, is just code. Get out there and do it. That's the best type of coding you'll learn for these 4 years. But yeah, that's all I had. So yeah, do you guys have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah. What's up?
So for the app development, that I forgot what it was called, but it was native something.
Yeah. Here, let's talk about that more. I'm just gonna keep recording this just because it's good to know questions. But for anybody watching on the recording, it's over. But yeah, so so you're talking about mobile. Where was that slide? Here. Okay, so React Native. Is that your question?
Yeah, so you said that you can make iOS apps with that?
Yeah, React Native allows you to make both, but when you actually release the project, you have to do like some extra stuff. Like if you want to really put it on the App Store, you have to do extra stuff. And what that stuff is, I don't really know, because my project, what I did, I never released it to the App Store because that's kind of like a big leap, especially with the App Store. It's pretty hard. With the Android store, Play Store, Google Play Store is a lot easier, but iOS store, it takes a lot. All I wanted to do is get my app like functioning, but if you really want to release it, there's an extra couple steps. I'm sure there's a YouTube tutorial for it, but basically what I had is I had React Native working there, and then what I do is I boot up this app called Expo. Let's see if I can find it. Expo. And so like Expo allowed me to like go in, I can like click my app. It's not loaded right now, so it won't open the project. But basically like I could have my coded app on my phone here. And so yeah, React Native lets you do both. Specifically how, I'm not sure. But yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. All right. Do you guys have any more questions?
I don't have any more questions.
All right.
I think I'm good. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to stop the recording. How do I stop this recording?